Today we have Honorable Christy Abizaid. She was sworn in as the Director of National Counterterrorism Center on June 29th, 2021. The mic is good. She is the 8th Senate-confirmed director and the first woman to lead the United States counterterrorism enterprise. Yes, ladies. Yes, that's right. She possesses 14 years of national security experience and has served in key leadership positions. During the Obama administration, Christy served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Central Asia. Prior to joining the office of the Secretary of Defense, Abizaid served at the National Security Council staff as both Director for Counterterrorism and Senior Policy Advisor to the Assistant to the President for Homeland Security and Counterterrorism. She also served for 7 years with DIA's Joint Intelligence Task Force Combating Terrorism as the Senior Intelligence Analyst in the Afghanistan-Pakistan Division and the Iraq Middle East Division. During this time, she deployed several times throughout the Middle East, including a tour as the Senior DIA Counterterrorism Representative in Iraq. Ladies and gentlemen, if that's not the most impressive bio I've read all day, without further ado, please join me in welcoming the Honorable Christy Abizaid.
Thank you, Shailene, and it sounds like we need to give you a better selection of bios next time. So first of all, thank you for that kind introduction. And I want to extend a special thank you to Vice Admiral Sharp. I think this is your last GEOINT as NGA Director, and the National Counterterrorism Center and NGA have enjoyed a really strong partnership over the years, ever since our founding nearly 18 years ago. And you've always been a great champion of the CT community. So thank you for all you do. Appreciate it. Thank you also to the GEOINT community for inviting me to this great event. I've had some time to wander the booths and see what is out there, and it's mind-blowing. Even as somebody that hasn't been a government employee my entire life for a short stint, it's really remarkable to see where the technology is going and how much value it's going to add to us as policymakers, as intelligence professionals. It's incredible. So I've had the honor of serving as the director for the National Counterterrorism Center, as Shailene said, since June of last year. And as someone who began my career in the intelligence community as a CT officer less than a year after the 9/11 attacks, the opportunity 20 years later to lead the nation's premier counterterrorism center is quite humbling. And I'm especially fortunate to be taking on that role surrounded by people who represent the best of what our government's most dedicated, innovative, and expert national security professionals have to offer. Now, my time as director of NCTC coincides with an important moment of transition for the CT community. Our country's counterterrorism priorities, while critical, are no longer the driving force of U.S. national security. That's something we should be really proud of. It's a credit to the success of our CT community over the last 20 years, and it's an achievement that our CT professionals must continue to work hard to uphold. One major attack could reverse that progress. Today, with Russia waging literal war in Europe, an assertive and highly sophisticated competitor in Beijing, rising threats from an array of non-state actors, and the advent and accessibility of new and more powerful technologies, our CT enterprise must learn to navigate against a persistent and committed terrorist threat, even as the rest of the U.S. national security community turns its attention to other major issues, especially strategic competition. Indeed, today's threat landscape requires that the United States be agile and capable of deterring all manner of adversary, and it demands that those of us in the CT community embrace the transition away from the CT dominance of the post-9/11 era while responsibly managing our CT enterprise in a way that continues to protect the country from those with violent political ambitions who seek to do us harm. Now, with that backdrop, let me talk to you about 3 different aspects of today's CT fight. First, I'd like to talk a little bit about how our nation's CT challenge has evolved since 9/11. I'll describe a little bit about how our CT approach has evolved with it, and in particular the role that this great GEOINT community has provided along the way. And third, I'll discuss where our future focus must reside in innovation and partnerships as we build for the CT challenge of the next decade. So more than 20 years after the 9/11 attack, the threat to the homeland posed by foreign terrorist organizations is dramatically different. In many ways, the threat to our shores is less acute. No longer are we fighting a singular, well-funded, networked, and ideological committed organization concentrated in one region, the AfPak region of the world. That version of al-Qaeda has been decimated. In its place, however, the terrorist threat has emerged as more diffuse, more geographically dispersed, and in many ways more complex. Today's al-Qaeda has affiliated organizations across 5 major hubs: al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, al-Shabaab in Somalia, AQIM in North Africa, Haras al-Din in Syria, al-Qaeda in the Indian subcontinent. One of al-Qaeda's former affiliates, al-Qaeda in Iraq, spawned the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, which dominated the terrorist outlook from 2014 until coalition pressure denied its territorial caliphate in 2017. Today's ISIS still remains a potent threat, not just in Iraq and Syria, but increasingly across swaths of Africa, where 8 of its 16 branches are now active in promoting insurgency and terror. ISIS's innovation was not just territorial integrity, it was particularly effective at moving away from al-Qaeda's hierarchical approach to directed plotting and instead inspired a new generation of individuals to attack in their home countries using whatever means at their disposal. This ushered in a new challenge for the CT community: the threat from lone individuals with low signatures and lacking formal ties to terrorist groups who mobilize to violence in very unpredictable ways. Be it shootings in San Bernardino, California, and at the Pulse nightclub in Florida, the vehicle attacks along the promenade in Nice, France, or on a bike path in New York City, or stabbings on a bridge in London. Together, these incidents serve as tragic examples of the way today's threat is most likely to manifest in the West. As this rise of inspired attacks is growing, that is not to say that the threat of centrally directed plotting has disappeared. Rather, it just provides the CT community another layer of complexity for our CT challenge. These tactical shifts in the CT landscape are not the only challenges we have witnessed since 9/11. Today's threat comes from an ideologically diverse set of actors. In addition to violent Sunni jihadists like al-Qaeda and ISIS and those inspired by them, we remain concerned about the threat posed by Iranian state agents, their Shia militant proxies, and this is especially the case given the continued posturing by the Iranian government to retaliate for the killing of IRGC Quds Force Commander Qasem Soleimani. Other individuals motivated to violence increasingly emerge from dramatically different directions. For example, the threat from racially or ethnically motivated terrorists who mobilize to violence in furtherance of the superiority of the white race, that's a growing threat, including here domestically. So yes, while there is more for our national security apparatus to do than just terrorism, it is also clear that for those of us that are in the CT community, we still have our work cut out for us. And, turning to our second focus area, I'm proud to say that the United States has built an effective and sustainable CT architecture that will remain foundational to our country's ability to lead the way on CT and non-CT issues alike. This foundational architecture leans forward on collaboration and integration in ways both formal and informal. It recognizes the duty to warn. It co-locates professionals from different agencies to close seams. It drives information to the partners and operators who need it real time. It leverages intelligence and data from multiple INTs to pull together a complete view of credible threats. It doesn't just move at the speed of the threat, but it outpaces it to undermine terrorist plans and intentions against Americans, our facilities abroad, and the United States homeland. NCTC is a lasting legacy of this CT architecture. We were created in the wake of the 9/11 attacks to independently analyze the terrorism threat using all available information. We were given a mandate to share this information across the CT enterprise. We were tasked with maintaining the authoritative database on known or suspected terrorists, and we were asked to ensure integration across the national CT effort through effective planning and strategy. Another lasting legacy is what the GEOINT community has brought to the table in terms of innovation, tactical awareness, and decision advantage, as General Clark would say. GEOINT helps us paint a picture for policymakers and operational leaders of potential CT threats. It adds context and can explain the gravity of a given threat, and it can be the difference in whether threats get disrupted or not. Given the theme of the conference, let's take a minute to reflect just how foundational the GEOINT effort has been. Our analysts use it daily to fuse intelligence from different disciplines to understand the complexity of a situation. It allows us to marry human-acquired intelligence with technical information to understand issues more completely. This has been essential to our effort to understand the locations, movements, and travel patterns of terrorists and to understand their activities in a very complex world. Further, it's been essential to our global force protection efforts as our military achieved battlefield dominance and our diplomats have served at high-threat posts. It has been determinative in validating or debunking all manner of CT intelligence reporting, and it has been an essential component of our operations against high-value targets, including in the operation 11 years ago next week that removed Osama bin Laden from the battlefield. Indeed, throughout our CT campaign, a campaign that has protected the United States from another 9/11 style attack, GEOINT has been a critical enabler of the CT community's success. Now, even as our CT effort has leveraged the best of our intelligence community, one of our greatest challenges is maintaining the ability to innovate and adapt as quickly as our adversaries, especially in an era of rapid technological advancement that has lowered barriers to entry for the use of new, powerful, and far-reaching tools. That brings me to my third point of emphasis. Our CT enterprise must be positioned to leverage cutting-edge technology, ubiquitous data, critical partnerships to raise the cost for terrorists who seek to operate in this country and across the globe. At NCTC, technological innovation must be at the heart of our mission. Fusing intelligence data on foreign and domestic counterterrorism threats, living in the seams between agencies to help the community discover and prevent attacks. This is why we were created. If this world of collaboration and intelligence fusion does not benefit responsibly from today's era of digital transformation, we risk being overwhelmed by the data environment, overwhelmed by the signal-to-noise ratio. We must discover threat intelligence and information of value, and we must build a system that navigates borderless threats with the utmost respect for privacy, civil liberties, and our citizenry's First Amendment rights. One way we're doing this is by modernizing our IT systems at NCTC. Whether executing the successful migration of systems to the cloud, replacing legacy systems, or working on new ways to automate the laborious process of data extraction from cable documents and seized media, we are focused on better navigating today's information technology environment. We are also experimenting with how to use automation and machine learning to further optimize processes that protect our country, such as our screening and vetting enterprise. And alongside technology is a focus on the workforce, where we recognize the need to invest in digital expertise, data science capabilities, and a tech-literate employee base. But even the best technology is only going to get us part of the way. Strong strategic partnerships are needed to ensure our community can go the distance. That means continuing to invest in traditional intelligence partnerships while increasing our engagement with non-traditional partners, whether that's the private sector, state, local, tribal, territorial authorities, or federal agencies that are outside of the IC. It means leaning forward to produce products for audiences that don't live in a top-secret world. It means investing in our NCTC program for domestic representatives and arming them with the information and the infrastructure they need to grow our customer base. And it means expanding our understanding of the CT requirements across the strategic, operational, and tactical echelons of the CT fight to ensure we're providing the most objective, the most current, and the most useful insights into our terrorist adversaries. For example, over the last year, in support of our homeland-focused interagency partners, we have provided various U.S.-based tech companies with strategic information regarding terrorists' online modus operandi, key terrorism trends online, and terrorism-related hashtags, keywords, and logos. Tech companies show great interest in the broad range of briefings that we're able to provide from NCTC. Updates on terrorist content, tactics, and imagery improve their efforts to ensure their platforms are not vehicles for terrorist plotting and radicalization to violence. We've also stepped up our efforts to operate more effectively in an unclassified environment. In February, NCTC launched a new mobile application called Acknowledge, and this was conceptualized and developed by NCTC employees. This app is intended to give first responders access to accurate, unclassified information about ongoing incidents, including terrorist attacks, and to serve as a repository for the unclassified CT production that our partners have increasingly demanded of us. It delivers unclassified terrorism reports and alerts to mobile phones. It provides reference training aids, mobilization indicators, and various sources of vetted information. The launch of Acknowledge is a part of a continued push by NCTC to improve information sharing between law enforcement agencies at the state and local levels and put crucial threat information into the hands of those that will likely be the first to respond to a CT incident. In conclusion, at the end of the day, our job at NCTC is about protecting the United States from terrorism and enabling our CT enterprise to defend against a persistent adversary, even as others in our national security apparatus shift focus to other pressing priorities. Together with our partners, we've embraced this responsibility. We are constantly driving ourselves to close the seams, to innovate, to stay ahead of the threat. Continued success means bringing together personnel from more than 16 agencies and co-locating their intelligence, military, law enforcement, and homeland security networks under one roof to produce the timely and integrated foreign and domestic terrorism analysis that our nation requires. It also means working with all of you. And so I look forward to partnering with you to advance the CT mission, and I appreciate all that this community has done to lead the way. Thank you very much.
All right, so this first question is, standards and privacy issues are core to this type of analysis. How can our standards in GEOINT help support privacy concerns, especially as these cut across so many organizations and authorities?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think privacy controls, privacy concerns, they have to be built into the design of any technology that we're delivering. We actually swim in a sea of data, of commingled data. That's really important for us at NCTC to make sure that we are segmenting appropriately, we're minimizing appropriately, we're handling appropriately. And it's a laborious process. It can be a very manual process, and it requires a compliance regime that I'm proud to say is one of the most effective that I've seen in the intelligence community. But technology can help us here, and I think that smart technological approaches that build in the kind of controls that we want to automate will actually help us quite a bit in this realm. And so as you're thinking in the GEOINT community about those kinds of layers that you want to be able to filter from, that's going to, U.S. persons information on the privacy of American citizens, that's going to be the first thing that we want you to do to protect. It's existential to our mission that we handle that appropriately.
Thank you. This next question from an audience member says, can you share with us thoughts on how AI and ML in the GEOINT community can best support the counterterrorism fight?
You can help us move faster. I've talked about the sea of data that we swim in at NCTC. That's really important for real-time operations, whether it's individual border encounters of our CBP agents, whether it's real-time operations that need to happen in other parts of the world. Our ability to understand what sits in our databases, connect the dots, that's going to be critical. And I think AI and ML will allow us to reveal and discover trends in ways that, that right now we tend to do in your classic intelligence community way of reviewing reporting, understanding through your own expertise as an individual analyst what the state of the strategic picture looks like. I think our data can do more to inform our insights, and our data can do more to help operators on the ground deal with threats as they come. So I think that's just a really important piece of where we need to go, is real-time processing of threat information or relevant information to a threat in a way that enables, decision advantage for those of us on the ground.
Thank you. So that question was about AI and ML. This one is similar in that it says, what are your top foundational IT architectural needs to help counter today's threats?
Our foundational needs are just fundamental. It's fundamental to any government agency. It's fundamental to any company that's been around since before 2017. It's being able to structure the data in a way that allows you to process the data in the most effective way. It sounds boring, but it's really important that we get really clean data so we can do all the most important things with that data and get where I was just talking about in terms of real-time operationally relevant information. And so when I think about our processing power, when I think about our transition to the cloud, when I think about the data that exists in however many systems that we have to manually toggle across to be able to see the trends that are most important to us, I think that's a technology environment that has to be modernized, and in fundamental ways that I think all of the government is wrestling with, many companies are wrestling with. And so I think that's a really important for me as a director coming in. I can't let technology be somebody else's job. It's got to be my job. And so that's a really important focus that I have sitting in the front office there at NCTC.
Thank you. This audience member used a lot of explanation points, so I'm going to try to pull that through here. I love the Acknowledge app.
You, Ed?
It might have been Ed. I don't know. I love the Acknowledge app. Are you able to share early successes? Is it being actively used, and is NCTC producing more unclassified reporting over time?
Yes and yes. The early successes, the way that I use it, and I have a 24/7 watch that exists to keep me informed about what's happening across the globe in the CT realm. And they're the ones populating the Acknowledge app, and they're the ones when there's an advisory, there's an ongoing incident. I'm going there first to understand what is actually happening, not what Twitter says is happening, not what the media says is happening, but what's the vetted information that our watch is collecting and able to publish so that we're able to understand what the ground truth is. And so, they've done that on a number of occasions already. It's the advisory alert system was active during the subway shooting in New York just a week and a half ago. Any ongoing event is something that they're going to be on top of. And what I like about the app is that, we've been traditionally cautious. We're the government, right? We started with a rollout to our federal partners, but now it's about rolling it out to more and more partners, getting it to state and local authorities, getting it to our Five Eyes partners, thinking about ways where this app is going to actually not just be an information repository, but a collaboration repository as well.
Fantastic. Okay, so I guess the audience does not want to get off the topic of AI and ML. So back to AI and ML.
I don't know anything about AI and ML, but this will be great.
This is an interesting question, and I think it's one that we need answers on, and maybe not today, but over time, I think this is fantastic. So AI and ML are patterns of life and active detection centric. Or they're activity detection centric, sorry about that. How does diversity and inclusion factor in the shielding against profiling?
Oh, that's a really good question. It's a really good question. The technology of how we do it, I don't know. But, how we think about diverse developmental communities that are, again, on the front end of design of these apps, I think is essential to building in protections up front for things that, unconscious bias might not protect against. And so When I think about the way that the technology community, the way that our intelligence community is focused on diversity and inclusion, the kind of recruitment that we want to see represented of all of America in our ranks and in our workforce, this isn't just important for equality and equity. It's important as a business imperative, as an effectiveness imperative, and so I would just really encourage reaching out and engaging as many kind of communities that we can to bring the best brain power against those kinds of instincts.
Thank you so much for that. This next question is pivoting. With Afghanistan back under the control of the Taliban, how concerned are you about a resurgence of terrorism from there?
It's a top priority. We've got to be really clear-eyed about the terrorist environment that has existed in Afghanistan since before 2001, and we've got to be really focused on making sure that that environment doesn't raise up and present a threat to the homeland once again. Afghanistan as a platform for transnational attacks is something that we saw on 9/11, but the groups that operate there are very different than they were. The groups that operate there today are very different than they were 20 years ago. And so we've got to be objective about what we're seeing. We've got to be really smart as an intelligence community about how we see more of it now that we don't have the footprint that we had in years past. And, we've got to fit today's Al-Qaeda, we've got to fit today's ISIS-K into that broader threat environment I've described to understand not just what's going to emerge from Afghanistan, but how all of this fits together to present a persistent threat to the U.S.
Thank you. We have time for one last question. This question is, what do you need from a human capital management perspective in order to support your mission work?
More people. Come to NCTC. I actually, in all seriousness, I want more interagency partners sitting alongside NCTC officers and OD&I cadre. I want NCTC to achieve the intention behind it when it was first formed, which is to be a melting pot for the CT community, so that very naturally, very informally, the way we do business is as a collaborative community. And so that's a key focus of mine, is making sure we've got representation from across the IC in a way that really makes us better than our individual agencies alone would perform.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are running out of time. So with that, the USGIF leadership team wanted me to present you with a coin to thank you for your support today. So thank you so much.